have terrible working conditions at the Postal Service. It's a nonchalant attitude by our leadership right now that has pissed a lot of people off, man. And they're militant and extremely angry right now.
Corey Walton is on the line. Corey Walton is a letter carrier. I believe, if I remember correctly, I listened to several episodes of his podcast last week. He said he's a 31-year letter carrier. He's also host of the podcast From Aid to Arbitration. Corey, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Good morning. It's great to be here. How are you?
It's great to have you. I'm doing great. I appreciate you taking the time. We've heard lots of good things from you over the years from letter carriers here in Huntsville, and we really appreciate the work that you're doing. And so if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself and some of your history in the NALC, in the offices that you have and the podcast and what it's kind of turned into.
Absolutely. First off, I love your passion. We need more of that around the country as far as labor is concerned. But I'm a 32-year letter carrier, and I started with the union back in 2006. Became a shop steward of my station. I'm still the shop steward at that same station. I still deliver mail. And so we've tried to do this before, but I work on Saturdays, so I have annual leave today, so we're able to make it happen. So and I'm finally glad to be on here to talk to you folks. But yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, started doing arbitrations in 2012. Became an advocate for the NALC, and so like if you were to get fired, I'd be the last face you'd see. So I started doing that in 2012. Also was on the National Safety Committee for the NALC. Would fly to Washington every quarter, and we'd deal with the issues at the national and headquarters level as far as safety is concerned. Started this podcast From Aid to Arbitration about 3 years ago. And when I started it, it was solely for the education of city letter carriers, shop stewards, filing grievances, making sure those grievances were ready for arbitration, hence From Aid to Arbitration from the very beginning, informal step A all the way up to arbitration. And so I thought that was a clever name. And so it's kind of stuck. But like you say, it's kind of changed here a little bit lately because of the failures of my union to represent us and to put competent leadership out there for us. And so, yeah, it has definitely changed a little bit. And I thought it was funny when y'all sent me the message, the first thing you said was no cursing. So if any of my people are listening and they're like, he's completely different on here, well, y'all put the gag order on me, no cursing. And so it's turned into that, and so it's kind of become a little militant here lately. But man, we need better representation for this union. We are suffering right now. So yeah.
Like you said to me, I appreciate your passion, but we are, like I said in the email, on terrestrial radio, so we have the FCC censors shackling us. So we do have to, we have to be clean, PG. But this. We can kind of go back to your roots for just a little bit as far as, just educating people generally about unions and unionism. And you talked about trying to kind of demystify the arbitration process and the grievance process. And that's all incredibly important. And there's an opportunity here to do that with the, just explain to us the convention that's happening next week in Boston for the National Association of Letter Carriers. There's a lot of folks who are not members of unions who definitely don't understand the importance of it, but even some people who are in unions, the national convention, what's going on there, why is it important, et cetera, et cetera.
I know this is going to sound crazy if you've ever listened to my podcast, but when I first started the Postal Service, I did not believe in unions. I was anti-union. And not that was the way I was raised, but I always felt like the union just is there to protect those that would normally be fired. And so I wasn't even in the union. And but over the years, you see that there's nothing more critical than a union. And I heard you talking before about all these different things that are going on. The union is absolutely critical. And I have learned that the hard way along the way because, they came after me when I was a carrier, and that's when I got in the union, and because I hadn't done anything wrong. But I recognized the importance of the union probably back in '98, I believe I joined the union. And so, yeah, I was one of those that you're talking about. And quickly, when I became in the union, I saw the importance of it because, believe it or not, uh, the Postal Service is the most mismanaged organization in the country. I would put it up against anybody as far as it being mismanaged. And if we didn't have the union in the Postal Service, we'd probably be making about $10 an hour.
Mm.
And that's not a joke. But the convention is every 2 years. We'll be going to Boston next week. And I see a lot of people on social media, a lot of carriers talking about it's just a big party and just a waste of money. And it's a week of annual. We go up there and just a hobnob, and that couldn't be any further from the truth. A lot of people that have gripes and complaints about the Constitution, about resolutions, that's where that stuff happens.
Mm.
And so it's absolutely one of the most important things that the union does are these conventions, because that's where resolutions are passed. That's where the Constitution can be changed. If you don't like something, if you don't like working conditions, that's where those things are addressed and adopted, if so. And so, yeah, it's absolutely critical, the National Convention. And so I've come a long way since the beginning of my tenure at the Postal Service, to not even being in the union to leading this podcast and being so militarized. But yeah, I understand the importance of the union. There's nothing more critical than a good, healthy, strong union. Absolutely.
Well, and I think that your work with the podcast has really helped a lot of folks. We just had somebody in the chat. Calvin said, "Corey's inspired me to keep fighting. He's educated me more than anyone in the union to date." FATA also led me to Mike Cariff from ADA Arbitration. Also led me to Mike Cariff. Let's go Cariff for president in 2026. So that's a great explanation of national conventions, and they are really important. I think that your members that may have this idea about conventions as just one big party that's really just a bunch of BS and a waste of dues money. They get that from a reality that exists where that is kind of what happens in many unions. Unfortunately, the National Convention, even though it is the highest deliberative body of the union, and lots of important things happen there and can happen there, a lot of times, and particularly this is, in the interest of some union leadership who don't want to see an engaged union really kind of debating about the future of the organization. Sometimes it is devolved into like a big party and vacation and things like this, right? So it doesn't come from nowhere, but nevertheless, it is a very important place and one of the few places where you can organize and kind of change the direction of your union nationally and internationally if you're in an international union. But you spoke about some of the dysfunction that you've seen develop in the NALC over the years. And so if you could, we only have you for a little bit, for about 30 minutes. And so we'll have to kind of keep it short. You spoke, one of your recent podcasts was like 3.5 hours. So we'll have to keep it, pretty compressed. If folks want to learn more, they can go to From A to Arbitration, anywhere you get podcasts and listen to some more detail. But what are some of the highlights of some of the things that you and members are the most frustrated with from the NALC over the last few years?
Yeah, I would say that it's and it's funny you say that because I always tell my listeners, I was like, I'm gonna make this a short episode, and it'll be 3 hours long because I get to. You're gonna have to make sure I stay reined in, okay? And so, but I would say that one of the biggest examples would be this HIP training that management is required to do every April 1st. And it's heat illness prevention training. And we had a death of a brother down in Dallas, Mr. Gates. And I don't know if you've heard that episode. I don't know how many you listened to, but he passed away due to the heat. And this gentleman was on the verge of retirement. And the first thing that management came out and said was it kind of put the blame on him, where they said that he had received this HIP training. So there was no reason for this to happen, basically, only to find out that management falsified his HIP training. And we have found over this country, a majority of the carriers' training had been falsified. Management went in and said that the carriers had received training when in fact they didn't. And so that was one of the biggest things I was railing on, was the fact that we need to do something nationally, whether we need to get out into the streets and mobilize on behalf of not only our brother, Mr. Gates, who passed away, but because of how management was treating our safety issues. That's just one example as far as the safety issues are concerned. But our president refused to acknowledge that this training was first falsified, and the fact that we needed to get in the streets and mobilize and let the people of the country know what was going on as far as our working conditions. And so I was irate about that. I thought that our president should be presidential and be out front and take us into the streets and let the public know that our working conditions are third world country type things. We had an email that I read on one of my episodes the other day where one of the managers, an upper management, sent out an email stating that they wanted us out of the office in an hour. That's completely fabricated. They made that up. Well, he sends out an email and said, everybody wants to stay in the cool air. Cut the air conditioner off on the letter carriers and force them out of the office.
Wow.
And so that's what we deal with all the time. Brother, I could stay on here for 4 hours telling you examples of stuff like that. But our president is non-existent. We also have this route adjustment process. And this is the other thing and then these just two examples I'll give you, and then I'll let you get back to it. But in this route adjustment process, he signed off on it. It will be a mutual process. We were going to be working with management. First off, you don't ever do that because they're never honest. They will always screw that up. And so in this memo, he starts putting these times down, a load time where we load our vehicle every day. And that they can watch us on the street with these new scanners we have, that they can sit in their office and watch us on the street jointly. You never do that. You don't say a letter carrier can be watched on the street without actually going out there and watching them. And these load times, you never put times on memos because management will bastardize that every time. And that's exactly what happened. I've been here 32 years, and I've never seen it as bad as it is today, with the carriers being bullied, intimidated, pushed around based off of these memos and the times that this idiotic president has put on there. And the fact that they're watching us now, questioning us, berating us as far as stationary events on the street when they've not done it. They're sitting in the office watching us on the TV screen. And so we'd have to get in more into that in depth so people understand what I'm talking about. But any carrier listening knows what I'm talking about. But he's completely screwed that up. You never open the door for management to watch us sitting inside the office. There's a requirement for them to go to the street and watch us, and they don't do it. They're too lazy. And so, yeah, that's just a couple of examples of his complete failures as far as the letter carrier is concerned.
Well, and now you have been. I wrote 400 days, but I think now it's actually 500 days. If I recall from one of your more recent episodes, 500 days without a contract or with working under an expired contract. How did that happen?
Well, you're baiting me, aren't you? You said you didn't want me to curse.
Well, you can. Yeah, you'll have to. You'll have to try to maybe speak slowly.
That's it. Well, I don't know if you know, but there are charges brought up against our president. And one of them was he went AWOL at the beginning of our contract negotiations. This is his very first contract. He just got elected. And so he went AWOL on us. He just left. Nobody knew where he was at. He shows up like, I don't know how many months later. He just walks back in like, hey, what have y'all been doing? Well, hell, we don't have a contract. It's been going on for almost 500 days without a contract. And about 10 months ago, he starts putting out, we're a couple of weeks away. We're right there. A couple of weeks, just have a few things that we're still working on. A couple of weeks away. That was about 10 months ago. And then he says, hey, we're going to go lock ourselves down with labor, with management. This was a couple of weeks, about a month ago. And we're not coming out until we have a tentative agreement. Well, he came out with no tentative agreement. And so now he's saying it's hours away. We're hours away. And hell, I got the convention starting Monday. And so I think that it's directly responsible for him. I know that there are a lot on social media that say, hey, this happens all the time. It has never been like this before, man. This dude is completely incompetent. And so to me, the reason for the delay is that he was AWOL on us when it first started. And I think that management's taken advantage of him and his inexperience.
And, that going that long without a contract means that letter carriers have been without a raise for that whole time. Is that right?
Yeah. And that's the sad part about it, my friend, is that we have no disrespect to anybody, no disrespect, but we have carriers starting at fast food wages. This is a federal employment job, a federal government job. When I first started and you told people you were employed with the Postal Service, man, you're rich. You have it made. But we have carriers living in their cars, union halls having to put in showers so that they can take showers because they're having to live out of their cars. Our wages are fast food when you start out, completely unacceptable. And we got carriers that are hurting. And it's a nonchalant attitude by our leadership right now that has pissed a lot of people off, man. and they're militant right now and extremely angry. And I don't blame them. We have terrible working conditions at the Postal Service, absolutely horrible. And I wish that 2 years can't get here fast enough, man. Get rid of this dude.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
2 years is the next election for presidency of the NALC. So we're going to be. I'm going to ask you some about what some of the efforts are to push back against against this kind of complacent attitude towards management. But another big picture question before we talk about that is DeJoy and his kind of 10-year plan to revitalize, quote unquote, revitalize the Postal Service. It really does not seem like, from any of the unions, the APWU has been fighting on some of it, but it looks like I just have not seen a whole lot of pressure from the postal unions against DeJoy and his 10-year plan just generally. We're 4 years into a Biden administration. I had just assumed when Biden got into office that DeJoy would not last his whole term. I thought that especially after he fired Peter Robb with the NLRB, I just kind of took it for granted that there's no way he's going to keep DeJoy, this, private sector logistics CEO, executive who wants to kind of destroy the Postal Service and sell it for scraps. How is he going to last the whole Biden administration? And here we are 100 days from its end, and he's still here and he's still with us. Should the union be more oppositional to DeJoy and this kind of broader 10-year plan, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that can work when you bring in somebody from the outside. I think if you look at Marvin Runyon, they called him Carbon Marvin Runyon, but when he came in, he said that if you're not touching the mail, you should be concerned about your job. Well, union members touch the mail. Union, those that are in the union touch the mail, whether you're through the clerk craft, whatever. The rural carriers, city carriers, they touch the mail. He said, if you're not touching the mail, you should be worried about your job. The union is crazily top heavy. There's so much fat in this union. Of course, it's federal government. In the Postal Service, of course, it's federal government. So you can understand that there's going to be a lot of waste. But I think that DeJoy has done a good job of selling both sides, Republicans, Democrats, on the 10-year plan. I think that he's done a good job of selling the unions on the 10-year plan. So if it makes sense, it makes sense, regardless of who he is. I think that there are things in there that we should have pushed back on, and we are not. These S&DCs, if you look at those, that's these huge hubs where they're bringing in all these outside post offices and they're bringing them into one location. That is completely screwing over the city letter carrier. And we've had no pushback whatsoever from our union. Now, you've got David Groskoff up in Buffalo. He's going to be on the CLC ticket, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, he railed on it, and he did win. And so that shows you what a fighter David Groskoff is, but it's too far and few between on that. But, there are some things that we definitely should have pushed back on. Like I said, but I think he's done a very good job of selling the 10-year plan to the unions and to, Congress and Senate. And so here we are. So I guess it's just a wait and see approach. But there are definitely some things that we should have pushed back on, like David did up there in Buffalo.
And so some unions or some folks within the union are trying to organize to change things, both in, running against some of the current leadership, and also putting forward resolutions at the convention. The two groups that have emerged primarily, as far as I can see, are Build a Fighting NALC (BFN) and Concerned Letter Carriers (CLC). I think that you are, if not the founder, you are more closely associated with CLC. But the two groups are, they're friendly and cooperative, and there's not really, division there. So what does each group do? What are the differences? I mean, there's obviously some differences between the two groups, because there are, by virtue of the fact that there are two groups. So what is the deal with each group, and what do they want to do, and what are their differences, and how did they kind of emerge?
Yeah. I had nothing to do with the founding of the CLC. That's a completely different thing. And Mr. Guzman out of California kind of started that, and then they kind of came to me, asked if I'd be a part of that, and I said yes. And so, but it's came out of people that are extremely frustrated with our leadership right now, and that's obviously that's growing. But yeah, I have nothing to do with them except that I'm on their ticket. And so, the Concerned Letter Carrier movement, CLC, the difference between them and Build a Fighting NLC is that we're running for elected office. We're actually putting a ticket together, and we're running for elected positions. And so, the Build a Fighting NLC, they're not.
I see.
When you look at city letter carriers, you have those that want change, those that expect change, but then you have those that demand change. That's Build a Fighting NLC. They're a militant movement based out of Minneapolis, and they're growing by leaps and bounds with Tyler Vassar kind of as the figurehead there, but they're demanding change, and they're not waiting on it. And so, like I said, so many different movements that come out of the lack of leadership right now and the complete failure of the top two in our union, especially our president, who is, God bless him, just fallen on his face since he's been in office. But that's the difference. The Concerned Letter Carriers, it's a very militant movement, but we're running for elected positions, and Build a Fighting NLC is not. They're kind of, they're putting, you talked about at the convention, resolution on open bargaining, and that's their big thing right now is open bargaining. They think that our bargaining should be open so that the members know exactly what we're doing. Our union, as it is now, is tight-lipped about those things. We have no idea what we're asking for, what we're looking for. Been almost 500 days. Only updates we get are, hey, we're a couple of weeks away. We're still trying to hammer things out. To me, that's kind of, when you turn on the lights and the cockroaches go running, that's kind of how that is. They're trying to keep things hidden from us, and I don't like that. I don't want to know what your game plan is. I don't know what your blueprint is, how you're going to go about arguing these things, but you can let us know things that are going on.
Right. That's
where Build a Fighting NLC is saying, hey, we need open bargaining, like a lot of unions do. And the CLC's kind of coming in, we our kind of thing is the lion. I love that visual when you say, those that are on the same mission as me, and kind of adopted a lion as that. And So I love that, because when I tell my members that, or the listeners, that the Lions are coming, that's what we're talking about. We're here.
Mm.
We're here, and we're going to be in Boston in force, and so we'll put on a show. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I this convention really is shaping up to be much different than many union conventions. Much more, contentious and real kind of vigorous debate. Hopefully it all remains civil, and you are able to kind of debate the different positions and things like this in a civil and kind of brotherly and sisterly way. But definitely going to be some arguments on the floor is kind of my expectation. And open bargaining has really been something that has been out there more, especially after the Teamsters and the UPS both really kind of pioneered it on a national level. I mean, we haven't seen something like that in a long time on a national level. And I think people really liked it. And I think, intuitively after seeing it, it makes sense because people say, and I have talked to old heads who I've got a lot of respect for, and I have no inkling that there's any kind of like negative motivations or ulterior motives or anything. I believe that these people who told me what I'm about to say, they want the best for their members and they're doing what they think is right and all this kind of stuff. But, there are some old heads out there that are genuinely scared of open bargaining. But I think if you haven't grown up or come of age, so to speak, as a unionist in a period where closed bargaining was the norm, and you can just kind of see the differences between these two approaches with fresh eyes, open bargaining and closed bargaining, closed bargaining as a unionist just does not really make sense, right? I mean, I am a union member because I have a problem with authority. I have a problem with being told what to do and how to do it without an explanation. And I want to be a part, have a voice in what happens to me in my workplace. And that's like the whole thing. That's like the whole thing. The whole reason I'm in a union is because I believe I deserve a voice. Right. And so closed bargaining really kind of explicitly, in my view, undermines a very core reason to be a union member. But, nevertheless, I got kind of on a tangent there. There's going to be some there's going to be some other resolutions that are put forward next week besides the one on open bargaining, which I hope that one wins. Hope that one passes. What are some of the other resolutions that you're expecting to see in Boston next week?
Well, I know that the CLC is going to attempt to appeal the charges brought against our president. And that's probably most of the hubbub is going to be right there. If you're going to talk about a very tumultuous time, is when the CLC is going to attempt to appeal these charges that were brought against our president, because he has recently come out and said that he is not going to let us appeal those, that he's protecting himself. And so we say that he doesn't have that right. So we're going to appeal those charges to the body, and the supreme body, who is the ruling body, who's number one as far as the pecking order, is the members. And, we pay his salary. So I appreciate him sending out that letter saying, hey, I'm not going to let y'all bring this appeal up against me, but it's happening.
Right.
I don't know what to tell him. It's happening. So that's going to be the biggest thing. And so, it's going to be a fun time.
And so, if folks want to hear, more about that, definitely I would recommend going and checking out, because that letter that you read on your show is kind of bizarre. You had a guest on that said that one of the quotes from the letter that was ostensibly from the Constitution was just straight up not in the Constitution, which is a pretty bold strategy. Just making up stuff. And so, that's, I think, pretty funny. If the charges are appealed and are accepted, and the delegates vote that he's guilty on all those charges, what is the remedy proposed for that? I mean, are we talking impeachment of Renfro here, Brian Renfro, the national president of the National Association of Letter Carriers, or some other remedy?
Yeah, we want him gone. We want him removed. And he can go back to delivering mail. He didn't spend a whole lot of time on the floor. That will give him an opportunity to get back on the floor, learn some things as far as how you represent city letter carriers, I think it would be a good opportunity for him to go back to delivering mail and, kind of
Mm.
educate himself on how to defend us because he was not educated. He came up kind of on the coattails of some people. He never had to fight for anything. And hell, here he is, the president of, to me, the mightiest union there is the NLC. And so, yeah, we're going to ask that he be gone. That he be pack his stuff up. We can go up there and help him pack, and have him go back to delivering mail if that's what he wants to do.
Somebody in the chat said that there's a rumor going around that Renfro is now on board with open bargaining, which would be a very interesting that would be an interesting dynamic to play out at the convention. Another thing that you mentioned on your podcast that I just wanted to put out there was that y'all are you and your listeners are planning on all wearing From A to Arbitration t-shirts on Wednesday at the convention, and you have heard a lot of people saying that some of their leadership has said they can't do that or they'll be kicked out or told to change shirts. And just as a public service announcement to the people that are listening, we've got several of your listeners tuning in right now. My understanding, not legal advice, but my understanding is that is they can't do that because under the LMRDA, there is a Union Members Bill of Rights, which includes a free speech provision, which includes the guaranteed ability of union members to criticize their leadership, to speak at union meetings and conventions and things like this, unharassed and things like this. And so, obviously, the reason that they would stop you from wearing a From A to Arbitration t-shirt is because of the implicit criticism there. And you are, guaranteed, you have a right to criticize your union under the LMRDA. That's federal law. So I think they cannot do that, but not legal advice. So, but take that for what it is. It seems like, based on your recent episodes, that you are pretty confident, at least on Renfro losing in 2026. And you're also, seems like you're reasonably confident about, open bargaining passing and the appealing these charges passing. And so I'm just wondering if you have been part of some of the whipping of votes at the of the convention delegates, and if you have kind of an estimated vote count already in your head that makes you confident, or what is it that's kind of informing your assessment of the state of play for the convention.
Not that you should share all your cards by any means. He's not asking you to do that, of course.
Yeah, Renfro will lose in 2026. He will not be the president. He's one and done, and I'm 100% confident of that. He will not be our president again. He had an opportunity, and he failed miserably, and he continues to fail. That's the problem, is that he's not learning. And so I think that I did read that. I saw that coming out about the open bargaining. And so that's very interesting right here before the convention. I don't know whether that's a Band-Aid or what, or an olive branch or whatever, but if we can get the appeals heard, I believe that we'll be successful. That's the rub right there, is that I don't know what they're going to try to do as far as kick us out, have the sergeant at arms come out or whatever, arrest us or whatever for trying to get these appeals heard. But, like I said, that could be the most tumultuous time. Open bargaining, I believe, if it's allowed to be explained without somebody calling the question immediately, I believe that if people understood that and heard that out, that they would also adopt that. But yeah, you just never know, though, about the members. I've not done any kind of, when you look at these national elections, they're saying, these polls. I've not done that. Just kind of my pulse of the carrier, city carrier, through things that were sent to me and things that I read and see. It looks like a majority are for those things. And so that's basically where I base that off of. Now, you could get in there to the convention and, obviously things can happen. You'd be surprised, but yeah.
Well, like you said, we will see. The convention starts on Monday. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So we'll be able to have a report of one form or another on our next program a week from today. So look forward to kind of seeing what happens at the convention. Before we let you go, is there anything else that you want to, leave our listeners with? People who are rank and file letter carriers, people who may be going to the convention on Monday. What are some of your kind of closing thoughts about the state of the NALC and the convention coming up?
Yeah, you mentioned Mike Cariff earlier. He's another one that has decided he's going to throw his hat into the ring as far as challenging for a presidency. Mike and I are very good friends. He's a business agent out of Region 3, which covers Chicago. And I love that guy. And he's also running for president. You have CLC, Concerned Letter Carriers. You got James Henry, who'll be the president of that, and he'll be the next president of the NLC. You got David Groskoff, like I said, will be on there. That's a thumper. That dude is something. And so hopefully everybody get to meet him. Howard Comine out of Hawaii, a trustee, and you got Walter McGregor. We'll all be there as well for the CLC. But yeah, there may be several more come out, because they see that Renfro is weak. And so if you ever wanted to be a president, right now is the time to throw your hat in the ring.
Right.
He's not going to be it. But yeah, I think that if you've never been, there's going to be over 10,000 people there. It's very intimidating for the first time.
10,000?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there'll be about 10,000 people. Yeah, in Boston. And you ought to come and look at it. Check it out. But
we'll get your president to fly us up there.
Well, he loves spending our money, so hell, he'll do it. But anyway, yeah, it'll be quite the scene, man. I'll do an episode a day. Y'all can listen to that. It won't be very long, and I'll hold off on the cursing for you. But yeah, man, it's interesting times with the NLC, man. It's interesting times, but better days are ahead. I know that for a fact. You got people that are going to put the city letter carrier first. They're going to take back over. To me, I've always said two things: put the city letter carrier first, and love us. If you do those two things, you'll be highly successful. Even if you fail, you'll be successful because we got your back. You love me, you love the people in blue, light blue, and you put us first, brother, we're on the right track, and that's coming. It's happening.
One thing that I just thought about was the BFN is pushing for a right to strike. Is that something that they're going to put in a resolution? Are they going to put that forward as a resolution, or is that something separate that is just kind of part of their general platform?
All right. Well, in our Constitution, it doesn't prohibit that, I don't believe. And, it's just that we stay away from that.
Right.
But, that would be very interesting. We try to stay away from that talk, striking and because management, they'll try to terminate you on the spot. And, and they say it's against the law and all these things. Of course, our very, Sombrado, who is kind of the greatest president we've ever had. He struck, back in 1970 for our working conditions and our better wages and things like that. I think that you can do things without striking. I think you can mobilize the city carriers. I think that you can mobilize them to get into the streets and bring awareness to the working conditions. I don't know that you need to shut off delivery to the entire country. That may piss some people off because you got elderly people that are looking for their medications and stuff like that. And I think you can turn the public against you very quickly. We're a very respected federal organization, the city letter carrier, and people love us. They want to see us. When COVID came, the entire world shut down, and here we are still delivering mail. We never missed a day. And so people remember that, and they understand that they need us, and we need them. And so I don't know about striking. I think that you can mobilize and get in the streets and bring awareness to our working conditions. Like I said, brother, I could come on here and do a 6-hour episode for you on working conditions, and y'all wouldn't believe it. If I wrote a book, people wouldn't believe what was in it because of the working conditions and what we're having to deal with right now. But it's happening, baby. We're going to bring awareness to everybody. And so, yeah, I don't know about striking. I just think that there's a lot of things that we can do to bring awareness to our cause rather than shut off service to the entire country.
Right, and I'm sure that even though they believe that you should have the right to strike, I'm sure that even they would only recommend it as a last resort for all the reasons that you laid out. So Corey Walton, really appreciate your time. Check out, folks, From A to Arbitration anywhere you find your podcasts. It's a really great program, especially if you're a letter carrier. On your way out, make sure that you like the stream if you're Corey's listeners, but you should stay around. We got some more good stuff. But if you don't like the stream on your way out, Corey Walton, really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, my man. Hey, y'all have me on any time. I'll take some more annual leave on a Saturday, and I'll get on here with you.
There you go. Sounds good, brother.
All
right, we'll talk soon. Again, that was Corey Walton, a letter carrier from Nashville, Tennessee, Southern unionist. Love to talk to folks down here in the South. Host of From A to Arbitration, shop steward, and member of the Concerned Letter Carriers. Going to be running for the national business agent for his region.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.